Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following content delves into a harrowing and complex narrative that intertwines music, power, and violence, revealing some of hip-hop's darkest and most painful chapters. This segment is intended for educational and entertainment purposes, providing insight into a saga that has haunted the industry for nearly 3 decades. The already explosive federal trial of Sean "Diddy" Combs took a seismic turn as Marion "Suge" Knight, the former head of the infamous Death Row Records, prepared to testify. His testimony would come not from a glamorous courtroom, but through a grainy video link broadcast from the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility, where Knight is serving a lengthy prison sentence. The mere appearance of Knight, even virtually, sent a chilling wave through the courtroom. A palpable electricity charged the air, signaling the arrival of a witness whose testimony promised to unearth deep-rooted vendettas and conspiracies that had long lurked in the shadows of the music world. The arrival of a ghost from the past. Marion "Suge" Knight's voice, raspy but filled with an icy intensity, didn't simply rehash old animosities. It carried accusations that struck to the core of hip-hop's most infamous unsolved crime: the murder of Tupac Shakur in Las Vegas in 1996. Knight leveled a direct, horrifying accusation that Sean "Diddy" Combs was not merely a rival, but a central figure in an intricate and deliberate conspiracy to assassinate Tupac. The courtroom, located in New York's Federal District, buzzed with attention so thick it was almost unbearable. Diddy, already under siege in a sprawling sex trafficking and racketeering trial, had been battered by weeks of devastating testimonies that systematically dismantled his public persona. Every day brought new allegations and fresh horrors, casting his empire, built on music, branding, and a cultivated aura of power, into jeopardy. The prosecution's relentless pursuit of justice was clear. They sought to prove a decades-long pattern of criminality, arguing that Diddy's alleged abuse of women was only one facet of a far more sinister enterprise rooted in violence, intimidation, and illegal dealings. Hints of connections to unresolved violent crimes had already surfaced, but now they were calling a witness whose name alone conjured memories of one of music's bloodiest eras. The courtroom prepares for a historic testimony. A large video screen was positioned prominently in the courtroom, facing the jury and the defense table. The prosecutor's voice rang out, announcing the next witness. "We call Marion Knight, appearing remotely from the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility." A collective gasp rippled through the crowded gallery. Suge Knight, the former CEO of Death Row Records, and Diddy's fiercest rival during the notorious East Coast-West Coast rap war, was about to testify. Diddy's reaction was stark and telling. He leaned forward, eyes narrowed, a mixture of contempt and visible unease crossing his face. This was no ordinary witness. This was a man who had publicly accused Diddy of involvement in Tupac's murder for years. But Knight's accusations were often dismissed as the ramblings of a convicted felon with a vendetta. Now, for the first time, Knight was testifying under oath in a federal courtroom, lending an unprecedented gravity to his claims. Introducing Marion "Suge" Knight, a titan of the rap wars. The video feed flickered to life, revealing Knight, older and grayer, but no less imposing. Despite the prison uniform and stark surroundings, Knight's commanding presence and intimidating aura transcended the screen. His face was set in a grim, resolute expression as he confirmed his identity in a voice low and rumbling, echoing through the courtroom despite the electronic medium. The prosecutor began the questioning by establishing Knight's background, his pivotal role in the music industry as the head of Death Row Records, and his close association with Tupac Shakur. They set the stage for understanding the volatile environment of the 1990s hip-hop scene, rife with tension, rivalry, and violence. The war between Death Row and Bad Boy Records. The prosecutor then directed Knight to describe the nature of the conflict between Death Row Records and Bad Boy Entertainment, the label helmed by Sean Combs. Knight did not mince words. He described a bitter feud that had escalated beyond business rivalry into a dangerous game of threats and intimidation. Knight painted a picture of a cutthroat industry where ambition drove men to desperate measures, where alliances shifted like quicksand, and where the stakes were often life and death. Knight alleged that Diddy's ambition was fueled by a ruthless willingness to use underhanded tactics to undermine Death Row and its artists, particularly Tupac Shakur. The atmosphere was charged with hostility and fear. Knight recounted specific threats he and Tupac received, stating these often came from individuals believed to be affiliated with Bad Boy and its inner circle. The night of September 7th, 1996, a city on edge. The prosecutor steered the questioning toward the night of September 7th, 1996, the fateful evening when Tupac Shakur was fatally shot in Las Vegas. Tupac was riding in a car driven by Suge Knight himself, heading to the hospital after a violent encounter. Knight recounted the heightened tension surrounding that night. The confrontation at the MGM Grand Hotel earlier that evening between Tupac and Orlando Anderson, a known member of the South Side Compton Crips, was a flashpoint. The incident set off a chain of events marked by paranoia and a sense that violence was imminent. Las Vegas itself seemed to hold its breath as the drama unfolded. Knight described the city as electric, a place where danger lurked around every corner for those involved in the feud. The sense of impending violence was palpable, and Knight's narrative was suffused with an undercurrent of dread. The shocking accusation. A bounty on Tupac's life. The prosecution's moment of reckoning came with a question that sent a shockwave through the courtroom. "Mr. Knight," the prosecutor asked, voice deliberate and steady, "are you aware of any plots, discussions, or offers of money made by Sean Combs to harm or kill Tupac Shakur?" Knight leaned forward toward the camera, his eyes burning with a cold fury. His voice rasped with raw intensity as he delivered a claim that reverberated through the courtroom. "Puff didn't just want Pac dead," Knight said, referring to Diddy by his nickname. "He put money on it, $1 million. That was the word on the street then. And it's the truth I know now. He put a bounty on Pac's head, and mine too, for that matter." The judge acknowledged the objection, but allowed the testimony to proceed, instructing the jury to regard Knight's statements about word on the street with caution. However, the prosecutor refocused the questioning on what Knight personally knew or observed. Suspicious activity in Las Vegas. Marion Suge Knight. Knight did not hold back when describing the suspicious movements he observed in Las Vegas during the infamous weekend surrounding the Mike Tyson fight, a weekend forever marked by tragedy and unanswered questions. Knight alleged that certain individuals known to be closely tied to Sean Diddy Combs' security detail and inner circle were spotted in Las Vegas at that time. Their presence, he emphasized, was highly unusual and suspicious. According to Knight, these individuals had no legitimate reason to be there, no business dealings or public appearances scheduled. Their appearance in the city, he suggested, was not coincidental. Instead, it seemed part of a carefully coordinated operation, designed either to oversee or directly facilitate the planned attack on Tupac Shakur, and, by extension, to protect the interests of Bad Boy Entertainment. Knight's testimony painted a picture of a covert network operating in the shadows, a hidden layer beneath the glitz and glamour of the Vegas Strip. He spoke of whispered conversations and shadowy figures moving through casinos and hotel corridors, people who belonged not to the music industry, but to a more dangerous underworld. The implication was clear. This was more than just a rap feud. It was a calculated criminal conspiracy executed under the guise of entertainment. Due to ongoing safety concerns, Knight chose not to name these individuals explicitly, but the weight of his accusations hung heavy in the courtroom. His careful avoidance underscored the continuing risk he felt from these powerful entities. The court was left to imagine the stakes involved, a world where violence and intimidation protected secrets better left untold. Aftermath and mistrust of law enforcement. The prosecutor shifted gears to the chaotic and painful aftermath of the shooting that left Tupac Shakur hospitalized and eventually led to his death. After Tupac was shot and you were hospitalized, did you convey your suspicions about Sean Combs's involvement to law enforcement? The prosecutor asked. Knight's response was laced with scorn and deep-seated distrust. The Vegas PD, he scoffed. They didn't want to solve it. They had their own agenda. His words struck a nerve, exposing a long-standing skepticism about the law enforcement response to the murder. Knight described a landscape where investigations were deliberately mishandled, where crucial evidence was ignored or suppressed, and where political and financial influences shielded those with the most to lose. According to Knight, the official inquiry into Tupac's murder was characterized by misdirection and a failure to probe the real financial and criminal networks that would have been necessary to organize such a sophisticated hit. He asserted that Diddy's money and influence extended far beyond the music industry, reaching into law enforcement and judicial circles that helped ensure the true perpetrators were never brought to justice. This portrayal of corruption and complicity painted a grim picture of a justice system compromised by power and fear. For Knight, and for many who have followed the case, the narrative was clear. Justice was never truly served, and the murder of Tupac Shakur remained an open wound not only for his family and fans, but for the integrity of the entire industry. Diddy's reaction, rage and disbelief. Throughout Knight's testimony, Sean "Diddy" Combs remained a study in controlled fury. His face twisted between rage, disbelief, and frustration as he watched the screen showing the man who had once been his fiercest rival accuse him of a crime that carried seismic cultural and legal implications. Diddy repeatedly shook his head, exchanging intense, whispered conversations with his legal team. The courtroom witnessed the sheer weight of the moment, not just because of the accusations themselves, but because they came during a federal trial that already threatened to dismantle his legacy. For Diddy, the accusations from Knight were a strategic nightmare. They added an explosive layer of complexity to an already perilous legal situation. Even if these claims might never translate into formal charges related to Tupac's murder, their potential to damage his reputation and influence was profound. The tension in the courtroom was palpable, a reminder that in the world of high-stakes power struggles, the battles often continue long after the headlines fade. Diddy's struggle to maintain composure spoke to the immense pressure of defending not just his freedom, but his very identity in the eyes of the world. The murder of Biggie Smalls, retaliation or convenient narrative? The prosecutor then directed attention to another tragic chapter in hip-hop history, the murder of Christopher Wallace, better known as Biggie Smalls, or the notorious B.I.G., who was killed in Los Angeles just 6 months after Tupac's shooting. Knight's words exposed the notion that the widely accepted narrative of a gang feud between East Coast and West Coast rappers might have been a carefully crafted smokescreen. According to Knight, this simplified explanation obscured the deeper, more calculated machinations at play. an intricate web of power struggles, business interests, and criminal enterprises. He suggested that Biggie's murder, like Tupac's, was part of a broader strategy of control and intimidation within the music industry and beyond. The portrayal of the murders as random acts of street violence served to divert attention from the real forces behind the scenes, keeping the public focused on a narrative that was easier to digest, but far less accurate. A legacy of violence and unanswered questions. Marion Suge Knight's testimony injected a new and explosive dimension into the federal trial against Sean Diddy Combs. His words bridged past grievances and present allegations, forcing not only the court, but the wider public to confront the painful and violent legacy that has long shaped hip-hop culture. Knight's allegations, whether believed or dismissed, underscore how the unresolved murders of Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls continue to haunt the industry. These events remain emblematic of a time when music, money, and violence intersected in deadly ways, an era still resonating in today's conversations about power, justice, and accountability. As the trial continues, Knight's testimony will undoubtedly reverberate far beyond the courtroom walls. It is a stark reminder that the legacies of these artists and the dark chapters behind their success still demand scrutiny, truth, and ultimately, justice.